time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure, so let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Black Eagle Arrows,
Cabela's,
Antler Action,
Spot Shooter Archery,
Tom's Custom Turkey Calls,
Family Traditions Tree Stands,
Badass Slingshots,
and Mossy Oak. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. I'm your host, Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight with Dan. What's going on? You look perplexed there.
No, I'm just, you know what? I'm back in my comfortable seat in the cabin.
Hanging out?
Hanging out, and just, you know what? It's kind of got the air conditioning going. We're rolling in the cabin. Unfortunately, it's that time of year. It's, you know, we're just kind of getting ready and doing things and fishing and whatnot.
Getting ready for the upcoming season.
Yeah, you know, whatever season that might be, depending on when you want to hunt.
Right on. You know what else is in season right now?
What?
It's political season.
Yeah. You think?
Rolling through to our big election coming up in November.
November's coming a few months away, and yep, we got a big election this year.
We've all seen all the rhetoric, no matter what side of the fence you're on. We're not going to get into that right now, but you and I had a pretty good idea.
Yeah, you know what? With political season being here, and we're in the thick of it, instead of talking political, let's talk state of the outdoors.
You want to give a state of the outdoors speech, kind of like State of the Union?
Let's do that.
All right. Overall,
what is, and we'll talk about, you know, in generic terms, of course, because that's how we always talk in politicals.
We're going to talk about the industry?
We're going to talk about everything.
Okay. All right. Well, where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that you will never cut my mic off if I don't agree to your opinion on this.
No. We don't agree on everything. I've been known to clip your mic a couple times.
I know.
But not intentionally.
Yeah, because, you know, I just want to make sure nothing happens, nothing's edited. It's in its entirety. Just like the political world.
Okay.
See?
All right.
So let's start off with one of my state of the outdoors. Let's talk about one of our favorite things, turkeys.
Turkeys. All right.
I have to say, those are doing great. And have you seen, up at your cabin, have you seen little ones?
Actually, this past weekend I did see some when I was coming back.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And I saw little ones too up at our cabin. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that looks good.
Yeah, I think the turkeys are doing really well in the state. We've got an overabundance of them. The deer, at least in my area, seem to be doing rather well. Predators seem to be doing pretty well around our place as well.
Yeah, that's true. So, you know, when we get to the predator category, I'm going to, because I think the deer in my area, too, are doing well. Mm-hmm. I found out I won't be able to shoot any does during archery season. Mm-hmm. Kind of not happy about that, but...
Okay.
I wish I could to help out my managing.
Yeah, well, you know my soapbox issue.
Yep.
And we've talked about it enough, so I won't even go into detail with the mandatory deer check-in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, as far as what we're doing for our deer herd, our turkey herd, even our fishing, I think we're doing a decent job. There's definitely still room
to
improve in all aspects of it.
Sure. Land management?
Land management. That's a great one. Got to get more people on board of managing their lands for the wildlife.
And there's there's state grants and DNR grants out there that you can get your hands on, depending if you fit the right criteria.
Yep, exactly.
To help you out with that.
And you know what? It's a great program. You're helping out yourself in the pocketbook if you can get some timber off of it, and tax thing.
Yep, and creating habitat.
And then you get a break on that, and you pay it off. You get wildlife habitat that's better for them.
Yep, absolutely. It's a win-win-win.
Right. So, yeah, you know, I think overall it's going well. We had a light winter in this area, so that helped. Mm-hmm. So as far as the overall, I'm looking at the wildlife not doing too shabby.
Yeah, here in the state of Michigan, I think, you know, basically it's doing pretty good. We do have CWD in the area. They're trying to curtail that.
Yep, they've got some issues. They've got the CWD zone over towards Lansing, and of course we got the TB zone.
Yep, that I hunt in.
That you hunt in, which I was kind of looking into that. It's kind of shrinking, but it isn't gone yet.
I don't think it'll ever be gone.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I said, do you think it'll ever be gone?
No, I think there's been some people doing some of their own theorizing, and actually maybe some research may come out of it. I don't know yet, but I think it may be transported by some other means than the deer.
Well, that's what I kind of it's been, that zone has been in existence for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of making me wonder. It's like, well,
it's status quo. It's not getting any better. It's not getting any worse.
So why not just let it go?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just drop it and monitor. Oh,
Yeah.
wait. If you had mandatory check-in.
Yeah.
Don't go there. No, but, yeah, I keep looking at that 452 zone, and I kind of wish they'd make a decision to maybe just get rid of it all the time.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. Leave it how it was or what it is today.
Yeah.
It's just kind of...
It's kind of weird. The state of Michigan, if you think about the way they're managing the deer herd, you got the CWD zone down here in the south central. That's got its own little area that has expanded this year. They're going to make it a little bit bigger. You've got the TB zone, 452 or 480 something, and they keep changing the numbers on that. I forget how it's all put together now, but that's in the northeastern lower. The northwestern lower is the APR zone, and then you've got the UP.
Right, and if you look at how Michigan does there with the color map, you gotta match the colors to what you want to do and what you're allowed to take, and the UP is basically in its own. Then you got the APRs, and then you got the east side of the lower, and then you got the southern.
Do you feel like we're a big experiment at times?
At times, not only are we an experiment, but we're a... I don't know how to... With the APRs, they had to go out, they had to do some leg work, and then the DNR said, okay. Mm-hmm. So if you go out and do... Okay, I'll just throw this out there. If I go do the leg work for 456
mm-hmm.
and say, hey, look, it's been status quo for the last X amount of years, why do we have it?
Mm-hmm.
Would that mean they'd say, okay? I would have to do the... It seems like what the DNR is doing at this present time is they're letting people do the lead work, and they're just going,
mm-hmm.
okay.
Well, and truthfully, that's what we're doing at our place. We're doing the legwork at our place to manage our own deer herd.
Right.
And that's what they did with the APR zone in the Northwestern. That group up there went out and actually solicited people to support them and got that pushed through.
Right.
They did that on their own.
But the UP, the DNR did it. There
mm-hmm.
was no groups that went out and pushed for the 3 on one mm-hmm. side, the 4 on one side, no does. They came back with the report that says, hey, our deer herd's down, we should do this.
Do you think, looking at the way they're managing right now, micromanaging, I'll call it.
It is micromanaging.
As opposed to one rule fits the whole state.
I think micromanaging is good if your data is better.
If the data supports it.
Exactly. If I have an issue and I have data to support the issue, you can't tell me I'm wrong because mm-hmm. here's my data. Mm-hmm. Tell me my data is wrong.
Unless the data is skewed or bad.
Okay, so now that's why you do X amount of samples of whatever. So if you had a mandatory check-in, mm-hmm. You could say, all right, mandatory check-in, we got this. There's a plus-minus column for a gray area. Mm-hmm. But overall, you'd probably get a pretty good picture of what's going on.
Sure.
And then therefore, you could say the southern lower, yes. Mm-hmm. You could micromanage it the way we are today, a better way.
What about bear? What do you think about bear?
Okay, so bear...
Because you're in a totally different place from where I'm at.
Oh, yeah. A bear is... I'm hearing we're seeing a lot of bears they're decreasing bear permits.
Yeah.
Wait a second. How come we're seeing an increase
Same thing in our zone. Well, I don't know if they're decreasing, but I know it's harder to draw a tag in our area. And we got bear all over in that whole northeastern corridor.
See, and it's again, but see, bear, elk, those are very closely managed. Mm-hmm. You have to check all those in all the time.
Right. Yep.
Bear's
well, even certain fur-bearing animals, bobcat, otter, you got to have those pellets tagged. They got to check them in.
Okay. See, so
because those are, I think, one a season, if I remember right.
It's almost like we're missing the big picture.
Yeah, can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, it's like there's one more step we could take, but we don't want to take it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? We might as well just go that extra step.
Well, with everything being digital now, everything's just so readily accessible and easy to do. I mean, we're seeing changes across the industry digitally.
I think 9 times out of 10, you can get to a digital device, phone, computer, whatever, and get some information.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much anywhere you can go in the state. Now, there is pockets that, it's
spotty.
You're out in the middle of nowhere, guaranteed.
But you can drive 20 minutes in any direction, basically, and hit a cell tower.
Where I'm at, I could do that, yes.
Or like up where we're at, there's a lot of fiber optic. We've got Wi-Fi in our camp.
So you potentially, and I can do it the same way. All I got to do is, for me, I'd probably have to go to a better spot than my camp.
Mm-hmm.
But I could do it.
Go where somebody's got a phone, a hard line.
Or just go to your local McDonald's where they got free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. This day and age, using the digital media world to our advantage for the outdoors is relevant.
Okay. State of the outdoors. Let's turn this just a little bit. You're talking digital media.
Yep.
How do you think digital media has helped or hindered the outdoor industry as a whole?
Yes. Okay. So now, how did it help? Well, obviously the hindering part is, unfortunately, you find out the bad side of people.
Mm-hmm.
If a person, young or old, post a picture of their game that they've taken, all of a sudden, for the better lack of words, trolls show up and threatening them.
Mm-hmm.
Really? If you look in the picture, they're smiling away. You know?
Right.
That aspect of social media does hinder, but if you didn't have it, you would never know.
Right.
Or you would find out months later.
Right.
You might get a article in a newspaper or an article in a magazine.
What are those?
Exactly. That's where I'm going with that. Where is this?
Actually, we talked a little bit about this. You still get a magazine, am I right?
Yes, I do. Actually, I get a few of them still.
Do you?
And the only reason I get them is I like to thumb through them and look at what different articles are going through.
Is it? And I'm going to say this nicely. Is it toilet material? Or do you sit down and do you actually read articles out of it? You know what I'm saying? I'll thumb through it, and then if I see an article I'm interested in, that's when okay, hold on, I want to read this one at least. So it's kind of like scanning your phone on maybe Facebook or Twitter.
Actually doing the same thing.
Okay.
But through a paper. And then what's nice about the paper copy is I have it. It's like, okay, it's right here in front of me. And if I want to go back to it, where sometimes you lose it in the social media world.
Right.
Where did that article go?
Right.
It's not available anymore.
Right.
Ruh-roh. So it's helped us and it's hurt us. Mm-hmm. I think it's helped us spread the word about it, and it's gotten... Unfortunately, it also drives a divide. Mm-hmm. And you can, again, you see that in people. When you are able to comment on somebody's whatever, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, you start to see the sides that are taken. It's that thing that everybody can see it, pretty much everybody can comment on it that you let. But if you're going to put something out there, whether it be an article, statement, picture, I've learned you better be ready to accept
the fallout.
Just about everything that's going to come at you.
Okay. But you're talking just in general for general people.
I'm just talking in general.
Yeah.
The picture can be... Okay. So, the Prince of England released the pictures, 4 pictures, and there was a total outcry of the little guy giving the dog an ice cream. Mm. They were all over that. It's bad. You don't feed ice cream to dogs. That's terrible. So, you got to be ready. Mm-hmm. And I don't think... It was cute.
Yeah.
But I don't think they were expecting what was about to happen. Of course, everybody picked it up. Mm-hmm. It was white chocolate ice cream. Everybody was freaking out.
Yeah.
They talked to a vet, and she's like, well, there's probably very little none chocolate in there.
Yeah.
The reason you don't give dogs ice cream, which, okay, I give my dogs ice cream.
Yeah. So you're not the first person.
Right. Is because they might be lactose intolerant.
Yeah, okay.
So, okay, I'll try to prove my dogs aren't, but exactly that. So if we post a picture, or if somebody posts, but you got to be ready for that, good or bad.
Well, see, and that's different. I look at it there's two different avenues here. You've got the average person who has a Facebook page or a Twitter account that posts and just does their thing, and then you've got people who run digital media companies.
Exactly.
What we do, whether you want to look at it as a viable media source or not is a different question. It can be debated all day, but for us, it's. I think we have to be careful in what we put out there. We have to be very forward thinking before we put something out there, is to make sure we're promoting the outdoors and not harming the outdoors.
It's almost that adage of, before you do it, think 10 seconds before you hit the button.
Yeah. Well, the day with newspaper, magazines, you had a copy editor. When we're at the station at work, before anything hits the air, you've got the producer, you've got the reporters, you've got the assignment editor, the news director. Then on my side, as a director, and then you've got graphics operators and people, and then your anchors. You've got probably 10 to 15 people looking at this stuff before it actually hits. So there's more eyes that can catch something versus, in haste, clicking out something and bang, hit and send.
And sometimes Mr. Autocorrect helps you out with that.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's a very good one.
Okay.
Because there was some issues with an article, and there was misspellings and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, well, who?
Okay, well, let's talk about the State of the Union. Let's kind of come back around to that. What do you think about digital media and, like, blogs, podcasts, vidcasts, YouTube shows, things that are put on the internet for people to see, dissect, consume, and use as information? Is the internet doing a good job? Is the outdoor industry, are we doing a good job doing that?
I think it could be better.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to get things out there that you not normally would see. Pick something, a bow. Name your company. This is the greatest bow since sliced bread. Mm-hmm. Well, it gives you the outdoors, the media types, that it gives you those opinions mm-hmm. that you can see.
Yeah.
You could probably ask the bow company, give me 10 opinions, and you're going to get, well, they're the 10 greatest. This is the 10 best bows we have, whatever. But you look and says, well, wait a second. This person here is having an issue with it.
Right.
So it's giving you that opposing opinion.
Yeah.
But you got to be ready for that.
Yeah.
Well, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, hold on. It's not. I think there is a spot for media, definitely. And as you can see, with everything that's going on, whether it be news on TV, news on radio, where's all that going? Mm-hmm. You're having the TV is being chased down by other ones. Mm-hmm. The radio
is going by the wayside. You got Pandora, you've got iHeartRadio, which actually we're on now.
Yep. It's all in the palm of your hand.
It's all in the palm of your hands on your phone. So yeah,
that is taking the place
of the remote control and the dial.
Remote control, the dial, and the stack of magazines that's in the corner of the room. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So does digital media, blogs, YouTubes, Vimeo all have a place? Absolutely. If you were to take all that away, how much would these companies lose?
It's a good question. It's a real good question.
That I don't know if we could find out the true answer, but I'm sure we could get some opinions of it.
I know somebody who is actually on both sides of the issue.
Absolutely. And we're going to get this person on, and we're going to ask him this question.
Okay, you want to take a break?
Let's take a break.
Okay, we'll step outside. We come back. We're gonna bring a special guest on. We'll be right back after this.
I shoot PSE because I like one pin to 40 yards.
I shoot PSE for the perfect combination of feel and performance.
I
I shoot PSE because you can shoot lighter poundage and increase arrow speed.
I shoot PSE for the fastest bows on the planet.
I shoot PSE because my livelihood depends on my bow.
I shoot PSE because better engineering makes a better bow.
I shoot PSE.
I shoot PSE.
I shoot PSE. I shoot PSE.
Experience PSE. Experience performance.
We know the future of hunting depends on our nation's youth. But did you know that in many states, it's illegal for you to take your son or daughter hunting until the age of 12 or even older? As a result, we have fewer young hunters, and the Families Afield program is designed to eliminate those barriers. Hunting is safe, and the safest hunters afield are young people with adult mentors. Visit our website at familiesafield.org to find out how you can bring more families afield.
Welcome back. Second segment of the show. Dan, you all right?
I'm excited.
You are excited. Yeah, you got somebody you'd like to introduce.
Yes, I would. This person we have on the phone kind of changed my outlook and perspective of the outdoors over 20 years ago. And it was by sheer luck of the draw, you could say.
Okay. So this person is responsible for the man you've become?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
But kind of pointed me of seeing the outdoors in a different take and kind of a cool take.
Okay.
But on the phone with us, we've got Patrick Durkin, who was at the time editor of Deer and Deer Hunting.
Okay.
But now I do believe you're a freelance writer, correct, Patrick?
Yeah, I've been freelancing as an editor and writer for the last 15 years now, and so basically, Danny, my job now as a freelancer is I'm kind of in three different markets, three different areas where I really concentrate on my work. And one's as a newspaper columnist. I still write a weekly and then a bi-weekly newspaper column for 17 newspapers in Wisconsin. I edit a magazine called Inside Archery, which is a trade magazine for the archery industry. And then I'm also the contributing editor and writer for the Archery Trade Association. And the ATA is the biggest consumer of my time, where I work with those guys on many fronts.
You got your hand in a lot of the outdoor basket, you could say.
Yeah. Well, as a freelancer, you have to have different sources of income. You can never rely on one thing totally, otherwise you're basically an employee then. And if one thing happens to that job, or that assignment, you're done. So you have to have, in my opinion, the way it works for me is I've always been able to keep different things in the hopper. So if one were to collapse, I always have other things going on. And luckily, though, I have enough of a skill set where I've pretty much hung on to everything I've ever accumulated. And now I'm at a point where I'm working, nonstop, 7 days a week. But I think, you and I have talked about this in the past. This is not, in my opinion, work. Real work is a guy that puts his hard hat on and goes to work every day and does something with his hands, where he's using a skill that takes a lot of physical effort. To me, I've done that too, and I realized that's not my strength. My strength is elsewhere, and you learn to respect other people's talents, given my background.
You've done a wonderful job with that, because I've read some of your articles that we're starting to share on Facebook on our Up North Journal page. So when when I see them, I'm putting them over there for people to see. But that's a good for people wanting to get into the freelancing thing. Don't pigeonhole yourself down to one thing.
Right on.
Exactly.
That's kind of what Danny and I have done with the things that we do in the outdoors. Is not just a podcast, but we do some video work, and we work for a couple other little companies here and there doing different things. But you're right. Work is work, but when you've got a passion for something and you can take that and make money at it, and still take that passion and use it to further the love of the outdoors and the conservation and pass that on to other people, it's incredible. And we thank you for doing that.
I appreciate that, and I'm lucky. I enjoy my job. I work hard at it. I never apologize for the work I do, because I think I worked hard for it, and I'm still working hard. I I turned 60 this year, and I'm still plugging away as hard as I ever have. And it requires a lot of time sitting behind a computer screen, which I know, as I said, I don't consider that work in the sense of the kind of work I've had in the past. You know, like when I was 20 years old, I was in the Navy for 5 years, and I learned skills like welding and pipe fitting and sheet metal work and, you know, banging on things all day. And I really learned a lot of cool skills during 5 years in the Navy. And also, they even taught me how to crack into safes as a safe cracker for a while. And so I learned all these different skills, but, you know, you get to the point where you realize what I really love doing is writing. I love editing. I love the English language. It's something that's fun for me, and I've always liked working in the conservation and hunting area. So, I mean, I started hunting before. Well, Wisconsin, you had to be 12 years old before you could hunt. You know, when I was growing up, and I was still always playing with, you know, BB guns and bow and arrows, making bow and arrows from the time I can remember.
Right on.
So
I grew up doing.
Is that where you got the bug then? Looking at your childhood background of hunting and stuff, to say, hey, I'm going to become writing about the outdoors. Is that where it all stemmed from then?
I think, well, I never got serious about writing and editing until I was probably about 23, 24 years old. And I always loved to hunt and fish, but I was like a lot of kids coming out of high school. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't even recognize my own skills. I remember my dad, I mean, this is really going down memory lane, but back in the early 70s, mid-70s, when I went to the Navy, when I finally decided I'm going to go in the Navy, my dad was looking at all the different Navy schools that are available and different things they can train you in. He said, you should go and take their journalism school, because he said that's where your skills are. And I thought, no, I want to learn how to be a firefighter. I want to learn how to do these different skills that the Navy can teach me. And I learned all the. I got a special deal in the Navy where they put me in a school called a hull maintenance technician, which was a great combination of firefighting skills and damage control skills, but also some real good metal and woodworking skills. All these things I like to do, but then I tell you, Danny, I started to realize after a couple of years, though, I was working beside guys who were really skilled at this. I mean, guys, you know, the carpenters, you know, because the Navy has people that do carpentry work, too, on some ships, like the ship I was on. But they also have a lot of these metal workers. And these guys, I started to realize, man, I can weld, but I'm not that good at it. You know, and then you're up against guys who are really skilled in those fields. That's when I started to realize I better start looking at other things, other options. So,
writing on the wall was saying, don't do this.
The process of elimination, I ended up, you know, in writing and editing.
Well, that's awesome. And then, so how did you become editor of Deer and Deer Hunting back then?
Yeah, as you can imagine, there was no overnight success. When I got out of the Navy, I went back to school on the GI Bill and got a degree in journalism and also had a minor in English. And I started off working at a local newspaper while I was in college. You know, I was never a big sports fan other than the Packers and Badger hockey, the Wisconsin Badger hockey team. I liked that. But I wasn't a big sports nut, though. I mean, you know, you watch guys who are sports nuts, and that's not me. But I worked in the sports desk because I realized that was where the outdoor page was. And if I wanted to get access to the outdoor page and start working on outdoor articles, I wanted to be as close to that as I could get. So I took a job for 2 years on a sports desk at a newspaper called the Oshkosh Northwestern, which I still write for to this day. And I worked my way up, and eventually they gave me the control of the outdoor page. And I did that for about 8 years, where I was writing weekly columns and reporting on the issues of the outdoors. And just up the road about 20 miles in Appleton, Wisconsin, back in those days, Deer and Deer Hunting magazine had been around about 10, 12, 13 years by that point, and they were looking for an associate editor, you know, basically an assistant editor. And they contacted me to see if I was interested, and I had to think long and hard about it because I liked newspaper work. And luckily for me, though, I took the job because, as you know, the newspaper industry has been tough since then, and you know, and for the magazine industry, it has been, you know, struggling too in recent times. But there's still a good presence out there. But anyway, that's how I got to Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. And then about a year after I was there, the three guys who owned the magazine sold it to what was then Krause Publications, and that's when I became the full-time editor of the magazine.
See, Just
that easy.
Just that easy. Yeah, they sold the magazine. I became the editor.
Well, looking back at that time, you went on a hunt, or you followed a hunt with Greg Miller and with young Danny.
Right.
Give me a nugget from that hunt. I want. Give me something that I can use on him here. Give me a funny story. I've already got one from Greg, so I know there's got to be a couple out there.
If they match stories, I'm going to cry.
Actually, I really don't have one on Danny. The one I remember, because it's one on me, and it was my fault. I'll take blame for it. Another guy was kind of, I thought he was handling it, but it turns out he wasn't, and I didn't double check it. But here's the story: it was Danny got drawn, and so we set the dates for Danny's arrival when he's going to hunt with us, and we had Greg all lined up to hunt with us, and I've known Greg a number of years, and about 3 days before Danny's supposed to arrive in Wisconsin and start hunting, I asked this guy, hey, have you got Danny's license lined up? Has he bought his license yet? And he says, looked at me like I had a third eyeball, and just looked at me kind of funny, and I said, because back in those days, this is 1995. In those days, you could not just buy a bow and arrow license one day and go hunting the next. You had to wait, a 3-day waiting period.
Oh.
And so Danny got stuck where I had to call him up, and his wife. I remember his wife was kind of mad at me, and I felt terrible. But I said, we got to delay Danny's trip by at least a day, so that when he arrives, he can start hunting. Otherwise, he's not burn this time and waste his time over here. And so that was my story. And to this day, as you can probably tell by my voice, I feel terrible about it, because I thought, God, here this guy wins this, a dream hunt, and he gets his schedule all rearranged for it. He's going to take work off for this, and then we call him and say, hey, we forgot about the fact that there's a waiting period and we didn't get your license lined up yet. Now you got to basically cool your jets for a couple more days.
I tell you what, now you kind of remind me of that, because I just started a new job, and I was a month into my new job and asking for time off.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But it kind of worked out good. It kind of worked out good, because I was going to be there one more day at work, and I'm like, okay. But anyways, okay, I'm glad you came up with that story, because Greg Miller's story was...
Well, Greg told a story that we were all picking on you about, so...
Yeah, the light switch killed me. But I remember...
The thing is, though, see Greg, though, Greg's about maybe 5'10", 5'11". He's not as vertically challenged either, but, like I'm only in my prime, I'm maybe 5'8". And so it's not like I was just towering over Danny. So I think about it.
And at that time, you ended up getting your biggest buck that you had gotten today, which is kind of, I look back, because you were using the string tracker, and
that's right.
And it was one of those things that it was almost picture perfect. You shoot the deer runs in the cornfield, and we follow the string, right? And it's like, wow, it actually worked. And then at the time, we had an up-and-coming guy, some video guy named Pat Reeves.
Right, that's right.
And his biggest thing was he had to help me to the first peg of the tree stand, because I was too short to get... But, ever since the moment I got off that plane, and I always remember this, it was probably the most intense time of hunting from when I got there to when I left. And it was just, you showed me how it went about, and Tom Endrobo put in the time, Pat Reeves, Greg Miller, you ended up getting one, and it was just one of those, I looked at that and I went, wow, and I came home and I went back into my engineering career, and that's where I was for a long time, until a few years back, and I was like, thanks to the media age, on some, I think we were on a blog, we were on some blog, going back and forth with Mike here, and we found out we're only like 5 miles away from each other as the bird flies, right? So it was just one of those things. And when I saw you at ATA last year, I was elated to meet up with you again and sit down and be able to talk with you for a few minutes. But
thank you.
That was just the influence you put into me. And I say this to Greg, you, and if I see Tom and Pat, you four guys was like the wow factor. That I can't explain it any more than that, really, because it was wow, I hunted with these guys. And you said something to me that about you being an editor, and about it, almost about the same thing as about you it being work. But there's there's another person right behind you wanting your job that would love to do it.
Oh, that's exactly.
And
go ahead.
It was just a moment in time that kind of, I had to delay it for a few years, kids and all, and in my career, whatever I'm doing, and but now I'm doing this podcasting thing with the Up North Journal, and we're getting back into this with you out there, and it's just very influential on me and my thinking of the outdoors.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I still, I've always believed in the idea of running scared, but running still in control. I mean, anyone who gets complacent in their work, they're setting themselves up for a hard fall. And because to me, work is all about competition, and you might not know who your competitor is, but if you don't think you're competing when you're out there in the workplace, that's naive. You're being evaluated every day. Your work is always being assessed by someone, and a lot of times you don't know who it might be. But the thing I always kept in mind as a writer and editor is you never know who's reading your magazine, who's reading your newspaper column, who's judging the magazine based on how well it's edited, because you don't know. And a lot of the opportunities I've had in my career have come really out of the blue, where someone had been reading my stuff for a while and wanted to get a better feel for me in person. And the thing I like to pride myself on in my work is that when they meet me in person, they realize that basically the guy they've been reading my material all these years, whatever it might be, or these past few weeks, that they aren't surprised that they kind of got a feel for me based on my writing.
They know how Pat's going to roll, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that you mentioned a great thing about that, about people reading your article. What we're going to do is we're going to step out for a break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about media in general and where it's going and where you've seen it going for the last years that you've been seeing it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
So what do you do when you've completely redefined the way bows are engineered? When you've reached the pinnacle and the band starts playing your victory song, you start a revolution out of thin air. Introducing the all-new PSE Carbon Air, engineered with true carbon technology to be the lightest high-performance bow in the world. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
We know the future of hunting depends on our nation's youth. But did you know that in many states, it's illegal for you to take your son or daughter hunting until the age of 12 or even older? As a result, we have fewer young hunters, and the Families Afield program is designed to eliminate those barriers. Hunting is safe, and the safest hunters afield are young people with adult mentors. Visit our website at familiesafield.org to find out how you can bring more families afield.
All right, back for our third segment of the show, and we've got Patrick Durkin on the phone, an influential person like Greg Miller was about me in the outdoors, but we're kind of talking about what's going on now, and I think Pat's got a good grasp of how he's seen the digital media age take off. Pat, give us your 30,000-foot view of looking at that from where you were years ago, from the print magazines and the print to all of a sudden this big blow up of social media and the digital age world.
Yep. I remember back when the internet first started, showing up. I actually remember email first becoming aware of it, like in the late 80s. I wasn't using it in the late 80s, but I remember a guy working in the government asked me, the DNR asked me if we had email. I said, no, we don't have email here. I wasn't even quite sure they talked about. So this is like the late 80s. Then I remember in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, it started showing up. There actually was a thing called the internet, and it was actually at first real slow. Stuff would just kind of come crawling in on these old phone lines. And I still remember, it's probably about 1997 or so, the typical thinking in the print world back then was, yeah, everyone's making this fuss about the internet, but seems like there's an awful lot of smoke, but where's the fire? And, there was in their defense, here we are in 2016, and it's still very hard, though, in many cases, to make money at it. The advertising is still hard to make money on the internet, but some companies have been figuring it out. But it's humorous now, and we look back and think there was a lot of people who were real skeptical back in the late '90s that what the internet could do. Well, the first thing they started to find out, though, when they started to see the fire, well, they didn't realize the fire was burning their foundation, and that was, in the case of newspapers, it was classified advertising. The classified ads, newspapers were built huge on classified ads. So when Craigslist came along and took that market away basically overnight, I remember, Danny, there was a whole, 2 or 3 rows of women down in the main floor of the Oshkosh Northwestern that's all they did all day was enter classified ads. And so it was just a revenue stream and a half. And then about the same time, you started, as the wasn't too long after the internet started to build and take away that kind of market, well, the outdoor TV industry came along and started taking away advertising from the magazine, in the outdoor industry, where it was getting harder and harder to sell advertising space. People were going more and more toward DVDs, and of course, I'm old enough to remember when DVDs were a big breakthrough, the high storage capacity stuff, and it was amazing. And all of a sudden, you could put just tons of pictures on one disc, and because we thought CDs were cool, and then went from that to DVDs. And to me, I still remember, you guys will laugh, but I still remember my first old, Hewlett-Packard DOS system. We had to boot everything up every time you used Microsoft Word. You had to boot it up and then pull these disks in and out. And when you want to save your article, you pop a disk back in and save it to that one disk, and all this jumping around you would do to keep the computer going. And so now, here we are. When I started freelancing in 2001, I was still doing a lot of things where I would get assignments, and as I finished my assignment up, I'd print off a hard copy, put it on a floppy disk, include a bunch of 35 millimeter slides, then run downtown and drop it all into FedEx, and ship the stuff overnight to some magazine. And if I was editing something, I would put it all on a disk and run it down to FedEx and send it off to the magazine. And gosh, it wasn't even 2002, 2003. The FedEx, I haven't been on a FedEx now in ages. Everything's instantly sent back and forth between us on the internet. I've edited 2 different magazines now, totally online, where I'm doing all the proofing online. I'm tapping into their publisher's place and looking at the magazine on my Apple computer and doing all the corrections right there, from 1,500 miles away. So that's to me, I still think it's magic. And then I look at where we're at today, and now there's talk that the outdoor TV and cable TV, that's all kind of that's not exactly a guarantee either. And now they're talking about more and more of this stuff going into basically if you want to watch what I think of as Randy Newberg or Steve Rinella's program, one of these days, you'll probably just be going to YouTube to watch all that stuff. You know what? And you're right. It's almost getting a la carte.
Yeah, well, there's that new app on our phones that you can get all those outdoor shows on.
Yeah, the new app that just came out.
$10 a month, and you can watch 30 different shows on demand.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm still stuck in the old content world. That's all I really work on is content. And I'm lucky because I've been around long enough where people know me. I have enough contacts where I have no problem these days getting work. The ATA commissions work with me. I have worked with the Inside Archery magazine, and the newspaper industry. They realize there's still a lot of people like to read a newspaper. it might not be. It's not no longer a growing market. It's a pretty tough market right now. But there's people like me who can still. There's still a value in it. So you're really hitting people with different interests. And I'm guessing within 10, 20 years when my generation starts slipping away, because I think we don't live forever, and it's just a constant evolution. And I realize I can't keep up with some of the stuff I learned 15 years ago when I started freelancing. Things like doing the actual work online where you're building these, I think what they call it, building HTML and all this coding that you do. I don't know how to do that. My main thing is still writing, editing, and reporting.
Well, it didn't matter what type of media you're involved in, whether it be online, digital, or some kind of hard copy. You've got to have content. You've got to have content providers. Exactly. And without content providers, you have nothing to put out.
That's a key.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that you can always, the thing I see, and I think we'll keep plugging away at this until we get it right in the different mediums. But, the one thing that I think a lot of these companies will realize as time goes on, that the content not only has to be content, but it has to be good content. You can't get along forever on just buying stuff from just anyone. I mean, the photography, the editorial, all those kind of things. If it's not in good shape, eventually, people start figuring out that this stuff is hard to get through.
Exactly, and like you said, if they read enough of your articles and they figure out who you are and figure out how you're going to write, they're either going to form an opinion about it. You go, you know what? I really don't need to read your stuff anymore.
Or I can't get enough of it.
Or I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, people are. The thing that you never underestimate is people are discerning, and hunters and fishermen can see. They can smell a phony a mile away. They might disagree with you, and people disagree with me all the time. I think that's part of the human condition, is that we're going to we'll pick and choose what we want to believe and our different opinions on things. But they do know, though, whether you're sincere or not. People can. I think most of us respect that. We might disagree with people on something. We might even not read them for a while because they make us so angry. But then eventually realize, well, I can put up with this part here because I think overall I enjoy this guy's writing style, or I enjoy the information he pulls together because there's information here I didn't know before. And so I think as long as you're providing people information that they find compelling, they find interesting, they'll give you a little slack when they don't agree with you. And the thing is, too, I always tell these guys write to me, and they'll say, I agree with you most of the time, but on this one here, whatever, And my response is, hey, my wife doesn't agree with me all the time either.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I am so glad you brought that up, because I'm gonna ask you this, because I asked Greg Miller that we talked about wolves, and what's your take on the wolves? We know Greg's, but when we come back from our break, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask you the wolf question, like we asked Greg Miller.
Sounds good.
The 2015 Dream Season Decree is a deadly combination of speed and precision. It's built for the moments when time stands still. When the only thing that will break the silence is an arrow slicing a clean path to the kill zone. The bow of your dreams is a nightmare for big game. This is PSE's Decree. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
We know the future of hunting depends on our nation's youth. But did you know that in many states, it's illegal for you to take your son or daughter hunting until the age of 12 or even older? As a result, we have fewer young hunters, and the Families Afield program is designed to eliminate those barriers. Hunting is safe, and the safest hunters afield are young people with adult mentors. Visit our website at familiesafield.org to find out how you can bring more families afield.
Welcome back. Last segment of the show. Talking with Pat Durkin. And you want to talk wolves?
I want to talk wolves because we had Greg Miller on, and he told us his theory on the wolves.
Okay.
And now we want to get Patrick Durkin's theory on the wolves.
Okay. Pat, do you hunt? Where you hunt? Are there wolves in the area?
Oh, yeah. Since I started my favorite hunting, and Danny's, this is probably old news to Danny, but my favorite kind of hunting is hunting the northern forest. I've always liked the UP. I've always liked northern Wisconsin. I've hunted northeastern Minnesota quite a bit. And I used to hunt northwestern Ontario, right across the border from Minnesota, and up into the Fort Francis area and Kenora, up from the top of the Lake of the Woods. So I've spent probably more time hunting the North Woods and the forest than I have anywhere else, throughout my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Danny said that you have a different take on the wolf situation. Now, I read your article that we have on our page, and you were talking about every animal or every species has a reason, whether we think so or not. And
that was this weekend's column, sure.
Yeah, you were talking about the deer flies. You took that picture of that buck, and
right.
you said even they have a purpose, although you didn't know what it was, and then you proceeded to smash them inside your truck
right.
with your ball cap.
Yeah.
So is that kind of your thought process on the wolves as well?
Yeah. See, the thing when it comes to wolves, white-tailed deer and wolves have always basically been sharing space in North America. That's it's a white-tailed native range and it's the wolf's native range. And the thing that I always point out is that the animal we hunt today, the white-tailed deer, probably would not be the animal we hunt today. This really intelligent, evasive, smart animal, if it weren't always being tested by animals like the wolf. And so wolves kill deer. They always have killed deer. That's what wolves do. And coyotes will kill fawns. That's what they do. They aren't. The thing I always say to people is that these are not sinners. These are not saints. These are just animals, and they're doing what animals do. And we're humans, I think, where we get into difficulty, I think, when we talk about wolves and predators is acting like only humans are entitled to hunt a certain prey species. I think, I don't think that's how nature looks at it. I think nature is basically, humans like to manage things. We like to have some kind of control where we always have a certain amount of abundance. So we always have a certain amount of deer out there, a certain number of fish out there, whatever it might be. But the thing that I think we get reminded of continually is that nature always votes last. And so, for eons, the white-tailed deer really got along pretty well without a whole lot of human intervention. I mean, it might not have been around big numbers sometimes, but we understood that they, too, go in cycles, and wolves go in cycles. And typically the cycles, though, are not something that humans like. Humans like predictability. And so, we've kind of come to understand that when it comes to rough grouse, you'll see a cycle there. We kind of have some ideas on why we probably see this cycle in rough grouse between high numbers and low numbers. But this idea that I think the other thing I should mention is that people have this idea, too, that the balance of nature is this nice, almost a flat line where nature's keeping everything in balance all the time. You think, well, no, what it's more like if you look at nature's cycles, you see these dramatic ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. And then if you take and draw a line between them and say this is our average, well, you have this nice straight line that goes across the page, but one area you're way up here, and next area you're way down there, and you think, well, nature's not. This isn't fine-tuned stuff. This is pretty dramatic stuff that nature does when it comes to our natural cycles. So the thing I'll always say is humans don't like that, though. We like to have a little more control, and sometimes we can do that, but most times, over time, nature will always kind of take our little influence and knock it aside. So I look at I'm rambling a little bit here, but I look at our current situation in our northern forest, and there's no doubt in my mind that if we had better logging going on, more logging, more consistent use of how we're using our national forest, state forests, and getting a good supply of wood coming out on a regular basis, creating the kind of habitat that white-tailed deer thrive in. Because the thing is, our generation, our people around right now, we're kind of benefited from a time when the forests were regrowing from the logging era. And, in the area I hunt up north, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, a lot of those areas were still growing back from the days of the logging era. And so you had a lot of deer. And there's areas of Ontario I've hunted when we have mild winters. Man, the deer just go crazy. They're really building big numbers. But then between the biggest thing there is the winter zone. When a big winter comes in, bang, the deer are down. And then what gets interesting is then if you have a predator base around, like the wolf can keep that prey base probably suppressed a little bit more than what we'd like. And so that herd gets knocked down. In the meantime, there's still a lot of predators, though, because they were building up along with that prey base. But all of a sudden, the deer are knocked down, so now you have wolves that are not finding so many deer around either, and so the deer that are around, they definitely hammer them. And it's not, we don't like that, but I think that's nature, and we can. I guess my thought for guys that really hate wolves is, you can hate them all you want, but they aren't going away, and you're not going to get rid of them. Society will not allow that, and I know a couple of years ago when we had a chance to hunt wolves, I was one of the lucky 5% who drew a wolf tag. So I was trying. I didn't succeed, but I was up there trying to get a wolf because I thought it'd be a cool thing to hunt, a new challenge. And in my case, it proved too challenging, and I never didn't even see one. So I don't have a big problem with wolves and coyotes. I just figure they're out there. They're part of the landscape, and they're, like it or not, they're entitled to these animals too.
Okay, I got a twofold question here. That I'm going to ask you. Looking at the predators, like the wolves or the coyotes, bobcat, bear, that are going to prey on fawns or deer, deer herds or sick deer. Does the hunters have a responsibility to manage those predators as well as the deer? And secondly, with the introduction of the wolves back into this area, is that in turn going to make us better hunters because we're going to have to fight a little harder to get up on top of that apex predator list to be able to get those deer that are smarter?
Oh, I think it'll definitely make us better if there's more competition, And then the thing we should straighten out there too, though, is the wolves that you guys and I know in Wisconsin, they weren't reintroduced. They basically just
migrated,
came down through Minnesota, and as we stopped, killing them indiscriminately and poisoning them and all the things we did to get rid of them 100 years ago or whatever it was, those. I think society just realized we don't want to persecute these animals to that point. And so they kind of came back on their own. And now we can, thing I don't like, though, is I don't like this current situation we're in where a judge out in the East Coast basically decides that the wolf should be taken off it should be put back on the endangered species list. I think that makes no biological sense. The wolf right now is basically where it can be, it's where it should be, where it can be. No one's going to tolerate wolves in the outskirts of Milwaukee and those areas where people are losing their pets all the time, as it is to coyotes, small pets.
Right.
But I think the wolf, I think by its nature, has kind of figured out where it can live these days. And the thing I always point out too is that I'm not sure why people think wolves should be everywhere they once were. I mean, they say, well, their native range went all the way down to Illinois and Missouri and Indiana. I think, yeah, but elk used to be in these areas too, and how many places do you see elk anymore? And no one's complaining about that.
Right.
So we've taken away certain habitats that elk can live in, that moose can live in, and the moose, of course, you get in a whole different discussion these days about global warming and why the moose in northern Minnesota dying out, and why they're having such a hard time surviving now in these milder weather patterns that we've been having now for the last 20 or 30 years. So to me, I don't like the wolf. I call them the wolf worshippers, because you have people that worship the wolf like it's this some saint that we should just be protecting at all costs. And I think no, we shouldn't be putting those we shouldn't put any animal on a pedestal where they are no longer allowed to hunt and trap them. I believe in hunting and trapping. I think it's good for the resource. It keeps that resource. That's something we value for more than just appearances. I think the trappers I met in my life, you can't convince me that trappers are out there trapping beavers and wolves and bobcats, whatever it might be, because they dislike these animals. No, they like it. They like these animals. They like the challenge of figuring them out. And they love the fur that comes off of them. So, to me, I don't know how that's a whole lot different from the average guy who goes hunting deer. We shoot deer, but we have, as you guys know, we love deer. We love everything about the meat to the challenge of the hunt.
Absolutely. I guess that's the hardest thing to get across to people who don't hunt, that don't understand that. The passion we have.
Yeah, because humans are complex. I always think of the farm kid that has to, that's tasked with taking care of like sheep or taking care of a calf, and knowing that one day that calf that's now a steer is going to go off to market, but yet humans have that capacity. We have these contradictions that we have to live with because we are the most intelligent creature on the earth, and so we have these complications and these contradictions within us. So I just don't think it's all that hard to see that you can love something but still want to hunt it and bring it home and eat it.
Right on.
See?
Well said.
There you go.
Well said.
The Wolf by Patrick Durkin.
There you go.
See? Told you he had a totally different take on it. It was just, it's one of those things, and he's got very valid points. And a good one he made was land management.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been talking about that with your project you're going on at your camp, and we want to get some woods done, some forestry done at our camp, and so it all plays in that.
It's when you start talking about it, even within the hunting community, there's different mindsets and there's different passions. We've got a lot of older gentlemen in our camp at the club that didn't want to go in and do a lot of forestry. Well, there's a reason for it, and trying to explain to them and get them onto that science side and understanding why we're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's always interesting, you guys, that and I'll say this, and you'll see what I mean right away. For whatever reason, guys who hunt ducks, guys who hunt ruffed grouse, and guys who hunt pheasants, they all understand habitat. They understand that those guys, when they want to go find ruffed grouse, they know exactly what kind of habitat to look for to find ruffed grouse, and ducks too, and geese. They know that. God, look at all these groups that are built on the back of habitat restoration and maintenance. And for some reason, with deer hunting, we do not, as a group, emphasize habitat the way we do in these other things we hunt. And why that is, I don't know.
Do you think it's because it's so visual? When you say, well, we're going to go deer hunting, we're going to go to, most people here, we're going to go up north. Well, that means the woods. And then people, they have that visual aid in their head that says, okay, trees, big forest, big tract of land, that's where the deer are at. Well, if you go through and cut them, what are they going to do? I think there's maybe that's the mindset they have. I don't know.
Yeah, and for some reason they don't really dig into the what deer actually need to live. And the thing I always talk about with when it comes to the northern forest is we're expecting these deer to basically live in a house without a roof.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have proper shelter, you don't have proper food, and nothing, basically nothing in the kitchen to eat, and that's what we're talking about so often in these northern habitats. We were talking earlier off when we first were just getting on the phone about hunting the UP, in the area I used to hunt in the UP. It's up by Kenton in Houghton County, and this is back in the late 80s and early 90s and mid 90s, and the thing that I was seeing up there was just tremendous overbrowsing by deer. And you could just walk through them to be these areas of hazel brush that were so whacked off by deer year after year that it looks like an old lady's knuckled hand, just gnarly-looking stubs on top of these beaked hazel brush.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all from overpopulated deer. And so, to me, when you have those situations going on, at some point, as soon as we have a rough winter, those deer are going to have nothing to eat. And even down here in farm country where I live in central Wisconsin, and the second leading cause of fawn mortality in the first year, it's not predators. They're actually starving in farm country because these days when they cut the crops, there's nothing left out in those fields. Those are clean operations that they do now when they cut cornfields and these other fields. And then you look at overpopulation in the woods around those fields, and there's nothing in there anymore for a deer to eat. So I'm not surprised when I read some of those problems that they're having.
Exactly. That's a great point. Even farm country.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been preaching is land management. We're slowly starting to turn the tables, with mindsets up there. But it's that education process, and I'm learning a lot as we go along. It's not like I know everything. I don't claim to even know half of it. It's just, but you got to have an open mind, and try to figure out what's best for the deer and what's best for your property.
Yeah, and the thing is, as you guys know, and this you probably picked this up in your podcast and in your other broadcasting work, is that people still like to get the information. Basically face to face, word of mouth. They still really trust me. I always find it fascinating. I can write a column and talk about the stuff we're talking about, but then they don't really believe it until they meet me somewhere, like at a banquet, or they bump into me at a store and we get talking about the stuff. And then because I'm telling it to them face to face, they go, that's interesting. They're kind of listening. They got their guard down. They're not ready to fight about it.
Yep, exactly.
I'm not sure why that is, but people like to. I think they just like to see us. Look us in the eye when you're talking to them.
I think they're looking for your body language.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. It's just like texting an email. You can write something and it can have a totally different meaning than being face to face. If you can read somebody's body language, that if they believe what they're saying.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, I wish we'd instead of bashing on the scientists and the biologists that work in this field, a lot of these guys, you might not believe what they're telling you, but man, these guys love deer hunting as much as we do.
Absolutely.
Most of them, they got into that profession. They might not love it more than we do, but because they went to, sometimes people don't trust them because they spend so much of their career on a desk. But I think, a lot of stuff has to be put in the computers, put in the books, put in all the different charts and stuff, where you start having a knowledge base here that you can pass on to the next generation, the generation after, so they understand what the forest looked like in 2016, so that when they're around 100 years from now, they have some baseline to go back to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great work that's being done that I'm not sure we always appreciate, because we might not be around to see the benefit of it. This is nature and stuff. This is long term. We're talking about long term processes here.
Well, that's one thing we're doing at our place with our logging project is, as I'm shooting a lot of video and taking pictures so we can compare, 3 years, 5, 10, 15, and 20.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
because then you'll have some visuals that we're really you think about how we're using media now compared to what was available 25 years ago. Well, now you have guys like you who can. You guys will have so much credibility with your fellow hunters because they don't look at you as being a government agency person, and meanwhile you guys can be the chain, the link between those agency people and the university people, and put it out there on the landscape for folks. So you're serving a purpose.
Exactly, and that's we're trying to get there. We're going to have a logger hopefully next couple weeks. My other cousin got a hold of a logger.
Oh, you're actually starting the process at your place.
He's going to meet with a couple of loggers when he's up there a couple of weeks from now.
Okay.
So stay tuned to that. I'll know more when he obviously gets back to me.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, we just wrapped ours up, so it's they're pulling the final load out this week.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yep. So we've got probably 160 acres, and it looks like a bomb went off, which is good. Everybody looks at it and goes, "Oh my gosh, you I can't believe what we've done." And I'm like, "This is good. This is progress." I said,
it's as you know, unless you control big chunks, it's hard to have a landscape impact. But you think when people start thinking and seeing the neighbors do stuff and understanding why they're doing stuff, it carries so much credibility when they see neighbors doing it. And it's not, like I say, it's not just a government program that they think someone's trying to trick them into something or force them to do something.
Right.
And the tough thing though in areas with wolf country is that I know a guy that has a nice little 40-acre piece up in northeastern Wisconsin. He did all this great habitat work. He's even doing some northern forest type food plots and stuff that will grow in a food plot there. But then he did this logging, and he started having decent numbers of deer coming in. well, it didn't take long for the wolves in that area to figure out that, hey, this is a pretty good place for deer come to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And they started, you started finding evidence where they'd killed some deer around his property. And I said, well, John, you're probably this one little, hamburger stand in the middle of the forest, and it's in 40 acres. You really need to get more people involved, and you got to get the National Forest Service doing more work. And that's been the big challenge for these Great Lakes states. We have these national forests that really aren't being, managed the way at least the deer hunters would like. There's the preservationists who want to do hands off. I think that's not what we have in the national forest.
Yeah, well, you just don't get the right habitat. You don't get regeneration, and then you have a fire come through, and you've got so much debris on the ground, dead debris that's fuel, and it wipes the whole area out. It's devastating.
Yeah. So, but I can't emphasize enough. We're kind of mixing the whole different things here, but I really liked the things you had me talking about tonight, because with the way the media are going now, and I see guys, all independent people, on their own doing podcasts, doing shows like yours, and doing these kind of things where it's not all coming through one channel anymore, or two channels, coming through these multi-channels. Because I know I listen to podcasts, and I think how my original podcasts I was listening to from guys 10 years ago were basically radio programs that they just edited down in the podcast format.
Right.
But now you see guys who are really, like yourselves and the other folks out there, doing real specific podcasts and real specific topics, and it's replacing radio. It's just, you can dial in and this is what we're going to be talking about today. And it's something that's, we won't know where it's going for sure for a number of years yet, but I think it's fun to see it going on, and it's some people who can't adapt, they'll get left behind, but I think that's just the way the world works. So
in your eyes, coming from traditional media, and exactly from what I work in traditional media, I mean, you were in print and I'm in broadcast. Looking at digital media, you think it's going to take a foothold at some point and become, I mean, maybe it doesn't completely replace what we know as traditional media, but you think it's a viable media source?
Well, yeah, the thing that I'm confident, really confident in, I don't know what form it will take or how we'll get there, but humans have always found ways to communicate with each other, and eventually in the free market system we learn how to make money at it, and that's because that really guarantees that we'll get a lot more information out there in different formats in different areas, but then again you think, well, at some point some of the stuff we'll figure it out. And I wish I could, if I knew where it was all going, I'd be investing in it. And I know guys are making big investments in this whole effort toward YouTube, thinking, because they really believe that's where 10 years from now will be much more. Maybe it's not YouTube, but it'll be something like that.
Something similar.
Independently produce stuff.
Right. Yeah, I know. We're seeing it on the broadcast side. It's like you said in the print side. It's dwindling, and it's a sign of the times as things move forward.
Yeah. Well, it's like I remember, in the basic journalism classes I took back in the early 1980s, was they talked about newspapers themselves and how they evolved. In our country, there used to be lots of foreign language newspapers, but as people got indoctrinated in American society, and the generations got, the next generation, the kids no longer spoke the native language; they spoke English. All these kind of things, the newspapers that catered to the foreign language speakers, they had served their purpose. They were that bridge that got them into the American society, and they outlived their usefulness, and they went away. And I think, well, it might be where we're at with print media. I hope not.
Right.
But I always hope there'll be a market for good content, and that people will pay. Eventually, we'll figure out a way to make people pay for that good content, because you can't. People like me, we can't work hard and write articles and produce podcasts and produce radio shows and whatever it might be, TV programs, unless you're getting paid for it. You can't do this stuff as a hobby. Eventually, you got to have professionals doing it who are making a living at it, and whether it's book authors are the same thing. We found out a long time ago how to pay people for books. They never got paid much, but they got paid something.
Right.
So I really believe that we'll figure this out at some point.
See,
and the hunting industry would be better for it.
And that way, you'll be able to listen to Patrick Durkin for years on end because of the podcast world. You know what, Pat? And I want to thank you for coming out on the show tonight, and thank you very much because from the bottom of my heart, I got to admit, that weekend back years ago that changed me, you had an effect on me. So I just want to thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being...
Very flattered.
Well,
I'm really flattered to hear that, Danny.
Well, I'm going to blame you for the man he's turned out to be. I see you at ATA. No, when I see you at ATA, I'm going to shake your hand and thank you for the person he's turned out to be. Because, like I told you in a break there, he's my right hand man. Couldn't do it without him.
Yeah. Well, Danny's one of those guys that you're talking about body language and face to face. He's about as sincere. The one thing I do remember, and it's not a story, but I just remember his disposition on life. When I met him, you just tell this is a guy who appreciates life. He loves his family. He's into this, and he's enjoying the moment. And so many folks never allow themselves to be happy. And Danny seems like the kind of guy, as long as I've known him, he always understands that, hey, I'm having a good time here. I'm not going to be running around complaining about life because I'd rather be happy.
It doesn't do you any good.
Happiness is a choice, and I'd rather be happy than there's things that we have to deal with, and they aren't pleasant. But God, the people who always make themselves miserable, who wants to be around that?
Right on.
Exactly.
Right on. Yep. So, well, we appreciate you sitting down, taking a part of your evening with us, and chatting with us about some really cool stuff.
Right.
So we're going to wrap it up.
It was fun, you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. No. Wrapping it up. Next weekend.
We're going to be at the Archery Classic, Saginaw, Michigan.
In Cabela's.
So
we're going to do a show from there.
Absolutely. So if anybody's out in the mid-Michigan area, stop by Saturday or Sunday in the afternoon. We'll be there. We're going to give a couple little quick seminars. It's our Archery Classic, so anything that you need for your archery needs, trail cams, any of that kind of good stuff, come on, stop up to Cabela's and see us and spend some time.
Or stop down at the Columbus store and see Mara.
Yes, absolutely. Mara will be in our Columbus store down there as well. That'll do it for us this week, folks. This episode was brought to you by PSE Archery,
Black Eagle Arrows,
Cabela's,
Antler Action,
Spot Shooter Archery,
Tom's Custom Turkey Calls,
Family Traditions Tree Stands,
Badass Slingshots,
and Mossy Oak.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.